As one senior Barry pointed out, I was here back on November 11th, actually, in 2018. We called that Sunday Commitment Sunday, and my role that day was to explain the project to you and to help you come to terms with how you would support the project. And I began my presentation that morning by telling you all that I came with both bad news and good news. And I'm going to begin with the same line this morning. I am here with bad news, and I'm here with good news. The bad news is you're going to have to listen to me for the next few minutes. Now, this is the third match I've done. So far, nobody's left, and I hope you don't break that streak. The good news, I think, is going to follow. I'm going to talk about money, but I think what we share with you over the next few minutes, you will consider to be some good news. Now, I am Gerard Haviland, and Father Barry asked my wife Dorothy and me to be the co-chairs of the campaign committee charged with the responsibility of raising the money. Dorothy, if you don't know her, is sitting in the very pretty lady in the black, sitting in the fifth pew. And Father Barry was both very kind and very prescient to ask both of us to do this task. I love doing things with Dorothy. And whatever we do in support of the common good, we do together. She's one of those people who loves the work, and I'm one of those people who loves to talk about it. And that's why I'm up here this morning and she's sitting back there. Father Barry was also prescient in asking both of us, and that's because as an inveterate fundraiser, he knows that when it comes to raising money, there is nothing that two Catholics can do better than to tell a third Catholic how much he should give. And that's what it's been all about. Anyway, I got three things I want to talk with you about this morning. I just want to touch on the campaign a little bit and tell you where we stand on that. The campaign is not over. It will never be over. But we certainly have reached a wonderful milestone. I also want to share with you some historic notes that I've come across as we have worked through this campaign. And then, thirdly, I'd like to put the entire project, if you will, in the proper context within the community in which we exist. And when I talk about the community in which we exist, I'm referring essentially to what most folks describe as the village, Main Street, High Street, Garden Street, and the streets in between. Now, starting with the campaign, how many of you are familiar with the ads for Bob's Discount Furniture? How does he start every ad? They said it couldn't be done, but Bob's did. Well, I have been a member of this parish for many years. And for many years, particularly starting in 1963, after the conclusion of Vatican II, we had a parade of pastors who have struggled with how do we structure and how do we compose this church physically in such a way that we can take full advantage of all the wonderful gifts that came to us from the Second Vatican Council. And of that parade of pastors, many tried, many architects were invited in, and almost all failed. Father Conifrey of all of our pastors was probably the one who came close to doing something substantial. When Father Conifrey was here, so the rudiments of Vatican II were implemented, the communion rail went, he picked up the altar and he moved the entire apron of the altar and the altar itself past the proscenium arch out into the congregation. A few seats were taken away from in front here. This stone ambo was built, the beautiful stone altar and the tabernacle were added during Father Conifrey. That's about as far as we got. Then we had other pastors after that, and it wasn't until recently that the bishop sent to us a man who knows how to get things done, our Monsignor, Father Barry. When I talked to you back in November, I mentioned a little bit to you about my boyhood. I grew up in Boston. I was part of the Irish Catholic community in Boston. And it was a very interesting thing to grow up in the post-World War II era. There were two dimensions to a young lad's Catholic education up there. One was you were taught very seriously about the importance of loving God. And the second thing we were taught was to hate the Yankees. And I learned that lesson very well, and yesterday it came pouring back. That performance in London was awful. Absolutely awful to have the Yankees do that. But anyway, that was the second part of the way. We were led by a magnificent archbishop. And at the time, the soldiers were returning from World War II. The greater Boston area was expanding exponentially. The need for churches, the need for Catholic schools, the need for Catholic was unbelievable. And Cardinal Cushing, then Richard J. Cushing, Archbishop of Boston, was the man who raised the money to make all of those wonderful things happen. He was a professional, an expert money raiser, and he had a little mantra, a little slogan that he always delivered when he was asking for money: pray, work, and give. And then he'd say it again: pray, work, and give, give, give. And then he added on to that another little tagline. He said, give till it hurts. But we kind of adopted, in a way, the pray, work, and give bit. And Father Barry said, I don't want any pain in this, so I'm going to use a little euphemism. We're going to talk about your spiritual gift rather than a little bit of pain in your giving until it hurts. But on pray, work, and give, we prayed. You prayed. Each Sunday in our missal, we had the campaign prayer. I find this very interesting because it finishes up with some very nice lines. It says, give us the grace to live fully our Christian calling, to expand our charitable outreach in the name of Christ, and to plan wisely for the future. You not only prayed, you worked. And we had a magnificent turnout of folks who wanted to work in support of this campaign, as Father Barry mentioned earlier. There were people who staffed and structured those individual meetings we had at the rectory and over at the golf club, explaining the program, people who prepared the foods for those, and people who just did the basic grunt work to make it happen, the phone calls and the personal contacts to raise the money. So the second dimension of work. And you folks did the giving, and you did an absolutely incredible job of giving to this campaign. And forever and ever and ever, you should be very proud of what you've accomplished. When you look at the overall demographics of the parish, we have about 1,500 families. Statistics are very difficult to ascertain in a parish because the parish is very fluid. There are people coming and going all the time. But we have essentially 1,500 families, and of that 1,500 families, there were probably about 675 who are active members of the parish. And by active members of the parish, I mean they do the work to make the parish function. They send their children to the Catholic education programs. They attend the liturgies. They support with the contributions on Sunday. And that 675 is the core heartbeat of our parish. Out of that group, 449 folks contributed. And that's an incredible percentage out of the basic core group of the parish to have 449 of the families contribute. We met our goal. Our original goal was to raise $3 million. We raised $3 million. We have that either in the form of yet to be paid pledges and cash, which is sitting in the bank. We add that to money we already had on hand, and we probably have more than enough, assuming we have no difficulties, to complete the project. So, my part, and Father Monsignor Barry's part, someday I'm going to get that right, Monsignor, we thank you for your generosity. We thank you for your hard work. Now I want to move on to the historic bit. And thinking back to when Father Barry asked Dorothy and me if we would take on this task, I thought, well, I better know a little bit about the history of this place, lest I make a fool of myself in talking with people about the wonders of the St. Patrick Church. So, getting the history was a little bit difficult because the 8-volume history of St. Patrick that Father Barry has written has not been published yet. And I had to kind of dig and poke and look around, and I finally came across Memorial Book is the title of this little pamphlet. Dedication of St. Patrick's Church, Farmington, Connecticut, June 11th, 1922. And that's where I found some of the history. And frankly, I found the history to be remarkable. There's evidence that the first Catholic Mass was celebrated in Farmington around 1854. It was very common back then if a Catholic community existed without church that the Masses would be celebrated at someone's home. And that first Mass was celebrated in the home of John Flood. I don't know where that house is today, but that's where the first Mass allegedly was said. We were part of the Bristol function. In 1885, we were removed from Bristol and we were assigned to Plainville. And we functioned as a sub-parish to whatever was going on in Plainville. In 1918, we were established as St. Patrick's Church. During that, let's call it an interregnum, but between those dates of 1885 and 1918, there was a Catholic church that was somewhere near the intersection of Route 4 and Route 10. It was purchased by Father Dugas, who was the pastor at that time. And for over 40 years, the Masses were said down there. 1918 came, St. Patrick was separated from Plainville. We became our own parish, and we were assigned a sub-parish, which was St. Anne's in Avon. following year, the folks here decided that it was time to build a bigger church and a better church. So plans were put in place to begin this structure of this building here. The interesting thing about all of that is this, that in the late spring of 1919, and let's say the late spring is defined as June 1918, ground was broken for this building. Exactly 100 years later, June 22nd, 2019, ground was broken out here last Saturday evening for the restoration and the reconstruction of this church. And I think that is truly remarkable. 100 years, almost to the day, we've taken our beautiful old church and we've put in place the mechanisms to make it even more beautiful, more useful, and even better for future generations. Now, the other thing that I found in this book was very interesting, and as I said to you earlier, I have been a member of this parish for a bit more than half of the parish, the building's life, and it makes me kind of old. But over those years, I've known a lot of folks who were members of the parish, and way back when, there were members of the parish who were actually alive when this building was built. And I listened to their stories about what went on back then. And the story that I heard then, and I've continued to hear over the years, is that when these folks got to the point where it was time to buy this land and to build a new church, the opposition from the aristocracy along Main Street, from the folks who attended the first church essentially, was so intense that the project almost didn't happen. And in order to make it happen, the Catholic community created a straw corporation in which to buy this land so we could build the church. That has been a story that's been passed on and passed on and passed on. And I've often wondered about the validity of that story. And in going through this wonderful little book, it has so much information in it, if you look at it about 1,000 times. I came across a category of givers called non-Catholic donations. And there's a list of names there. D. Newton Barney. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Barney family, one of the pillars of the Farmington community for hundreds of years. Arthur Birdseye, a fellow who was a street named after him in town, and at some point had something to do with frozen foods. Richard Bissell, who was the chairman of the Hartford Insurance Group and the father of the Richard Bissell that maybe some of us know was the head of the CIA during the Kennedy administration. Julia Brandy, another old